Oh, now it shows live. Okay, but what does that mean though? Oh, now it shows live. Okay, but what does that mean though? All right. Hey everybody. Apologies if for technical problems here. It's the first time I've been trying to do this, and it's been difficult. Hey everybody. Well, it tells me it's live. For technical problems here. It's the first time I've been trying to do this, and it's been difficult. Well, it tells me it's live. So I had set up a live chat session yesterday, which is probably showing now as, you know, starting soon, but I couldn't get this one to activate. So now I have another one going here, which is from the GoPro. So I had set up a live chat session. I'll just turn that down. So yeah, hey everybody, and let's see how this goes. I guess this must have just appeared on my stream. Does it say live from my GoPro? Because that's what it shows here. And what?
Look in the camera.
What about it?
Look in the camera.
Why? So, yeah, I've got the GoPro set up here. So any questions, we can talk about stuff. I'm quickly looking at the little chat notes here. So hello to everybody. And it is now just after 12 p.m. Pacific time. So it's Thanksgiving in the U.S. So I've already been hearing some Thanksgiving wishes from people. So I wish you all in the States a happy Thanksgiving. And that is a completely different time from Canadian Thanksgiving. Ours was a few weeks ago. So I suspect a lot of people are on holiday break right now. So I hope you're enjoying your family and your dinner. So that's why I wanted to start a little early. Of course, the problem is connecting with people in their different time zones. So I tried for noon because this would actually be about 8 or 9 o'clock in Europe. So I've got an audience in the UK as well. So hopefully some of you can get in on it. And yeah, so Thanksgiving today. Okay. I wanted to wish a happy birthday to Jim because he mentioned it was his birthday today. So happy birthday to you. And someone here named Walmart Guitar Gaming is also has a birthday tomorrow. So I hope you have a good one tomorrow. And I hope you're having better weather than us. I don't know if you can really see this, but this is our weather right now. There, it's just pouring down. And it's been like this for days. Oh, great. And this is how it's going to be in Vancouver for the next 5 months. Again, technical difficulties. Hold on. Get his camera adjusted. I've got it on a gooseneck here on my table. So you can see a bit of my equipment there and over here. That's where I keep my pedal board. And so everything is sort of in this corner for guitar and pedal board. There's a delay on this, by the way, and it seems to be like 15 to 20 second delay from what I'm doing the actual movement here to seeing it on my iPad. and I don't know why it's such a long delay. It seems a bit excessive to me, but there might be nothing I can do about that. So that's where I am playing. There's my pedal board, and then I am usually sitting right in front of it by the window. So all these videos you see from home are set up to get the view. Of course, there's no view today, but I finally got everything organized in the corner, and that pedal board used to be on the floor, and I found that really difficult for playing because I constantly had to bend down when I was sitting in my chair, and that was difficult on my back. Always reaching to the pedals and making adjustments. I finally got that nice little cabinet which keeps it about 2 feet off the floor, and had to get it measured so that it would fit the entire pedal board along with my mixer. So now everything is nicely set up there for quick access, and I never use my feet on this pedal board system. Everything's operated by hand, so it's sit there playing, and then a quick reach down to adjust the knobs, and mostly that would be the delay pedal here, my memory man. That one usually gets adjusted quite a bit because I have quite a few settings for different types of delays. So I'm always kind of messing around with that one. And everything else doesn't really get changed much. I have this POG, which has the volume swells. There's 2 settings I have in there, in the number 4 position and number 6. There are 2 different levels of volume swell. So the first level I would use is just a very slight rounding off of the notes, so you get that violin effect. And I'm using those 2 settings, and one's more of an extreme violin tone, where it really does a long volume swell on the note. Now, certain songs that really lends itself quite well to that sound, and you can't overdo it. But let's see what I got here for questions. So yeah, feel free to ask questions, and I will check it out here. Yeah, does Canada do Thanksgiving? That was from Cliff. Yes, we do. It's just done a few weeks before the U.S. So it is 8 o'clock now, or just after 8, 8:14 in the UK. So we got an 8-hour difference. And got some viewers from Germany as well. And Doc has asked me, what is the pedal I depend on the most? Well, let's see here. If you can see it again, I will just turn this over. The pedal I use the most, if I had to pick one out of this board, it would be the Zendrive, which is this one. That is my overdrive pedal, and the one I've probably had the longest. I got that in 2005. I think it was the very first pedal I bought. And it is now a collector's item, and quite expensive to buy, even on the secondary market. I think they're selling for at least $500, $600 now. When I got it, it was probably around $275 or something, the typical price on boutique pedals. But that is a very warm overdrive. It's not a heavy metal pedal at all. It's mainly used for getting sort of a Dumble amp tone. Now, if you know about Dumble amps, there's a very special boutique amp made by, I believe it's Alexander Dumble. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong with that name. He has made amps for guys like Robben Ford, same name as me, different spelling. And Ford has always been one of my favorite guitar players that many people don't know about. But he is like a blues jazz player, already for 50 years. He's probably the best blues player that I know of, and very underrated, and really only known by a few people who are into guitar players. He's not he never had really any huge albums or any hit singles. He's played with lots of people already from the early 70s, like Jimmy Witherspoon and Joni Mitchell, the Yellow Jackets. He did a few months with Miles Davis. So Robben Ford is a guy I have seen like 25 times live. He used to come to Vancouver quite a bit. And back in the 80s, late 80s, he used to come here to a club called the Town Pump, which is in our tourist area, Gastown. And I used to go there almost every 2 weeks because there were so many bands. Everybody came there, every famous guitar player you can think of. I saw them all there in a very small club with, you could have dinner and sit right in front of the stage. So Ford would come there with his trio, the Blue Line, around, late 80s, and he had just had his first solo album out, and incredible band, great bass player, great drummer, a real power trio. And he was always very proficient at improvising and just extended jamming, always interesting, always different takes. And that's really what I, took away from guys like Ford, were their ability to improvise. And that's what I've been working on myself for many years, so that you would hear different songs from these guys and they'd always be played in a different way. So I really took that to heart with my own music. So Robben Ford, big influence, and I got that pedal, the Zendrive, because he used the pedal when he couldn't get access to his Dumble amp, which is a very large amp, and if he didn't have it or he couldn't take it on a tour, he would use the Zendrive pedal as a substitute for the sound of the Dumble. And the Dumble is extremely expensive. I mean, I think it's only available to the top players or the people who have, $10,000, $20,000 to get one made. So there are very few people that have this amp. And I know that, I think Dumble gave Robben Ford one of these amps, and he fell in love with it. And then I read about him using the Zendrive. I think that's Alex Hermedia pedal. No, his last name's Hermedia. But he had developed a few variations of this pedal over the years, and now the original is, skyrocketed in price. Some people still prefer the original over the subsequent models. So I never ever considered getting rid of that, because that gives you a really nice sort of a warm blues tone with a really nice control with your fingers. You can really control the nuances of sound. It's quite sensitive and gives you that overdrive of a Dumble amp, which sounds like it's been using an attenuator. An attenuator is a way you can increase the gain on an amp to make it, like if you were to turn up a tube amp to 10, you would get a lot of overdrive from having it cranked from the tubes, but an attenuator lets you crank an amp, overdrive it without the volume, so you could actually put it on 2, but still have the overdrive sound of the tubes being cranked up. So the Zendrive works in a similar way. It has, you even on full, on the overdrive, it doesn't make much difference. It's like between 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock going full. It doesn't really make a huge difference, but it is meant more as a blues style of pedal. So I will use that in conjunction with my other second overdrive sometimes. Well, actually not together, but when I need a little bit heavier tones, I'll use this one, which is a Wampler dual fusion. And the Wampler has also two sort of boutique overdrives in there. One is a bit heavier and the other one is more of an old style vintage blues overdrive. And they can be combined with their overdrive settings, which would be, let's see here. So here we'd have the overdrives, and then there's volume and tone controls. And you can even set the throaty nature of the overdrive. Now I'll use that as just variety's sake. I'll switch to that one. If I've been playing solos on the Zendrive for a while, 10, 15 minutes, and I'll switch over to the other one. So that's what I'm always doing. I'm switching back and forth between those two overdrives. All right, let's see here if there's any more questions. Do I ever play in D standard tuning? This is a question from Steven. I have never played any alternate tunings, if you can believe it. I use standard tuning on everything. I've just been either too lazy. I just don't like constantly tuning strings to different things. So I've been pretty standard that way. I'm probably missing out on some things. I mean, obviously there's certain guitarists that use different tunings, like Keith Richards and that kind of thing, but I have never really covered the Stones. I stick with standard. I don't drop down even to, some people will go into different key, drop it down lower, but I don't. And I try to figure everything out based on standard tuning, even sometimes when they haven't been done that way. Like I used to play Moonlight Mile from the Stones, which I'm pretty sure is done in an alternate tuning, but I learned how to do it on standard tuning. So you can do it. It's just slightly different. I mean, alternate tunings will give you a shortcut and an easier way to play certain things because you're able to hit more open strings. And in a regular tuning, you may not be able to hit those strings. You'd have to be limited and keep it to a triad or a dyad, and you can't just, smash away. So yeah, I don't do that, and I am a hardcore standard tuning player. All right, let's see what else we have here. Simon from the UK is asking, how's my health? How am I doing? Well, like I said before, I had a lot of things crop up in the last year, and the major one was the aneurysm, which was April of this year. So I'm still recovering from that. I am pretty well recovered from that, but I'm still having some itchy scalp issues as the feeling comes back. It always seems to be itching. But from that time, then I had the kidney stone pain that went on for about a month or 6 weeks, where I had to go to emergency and spent 7 hours there before I got scanned, and they said, oh yeah, you got a 5-centimeter stone. And then I was referred to a urologist, and then I started taking supplements for the stone, and I think I eventually did break it down myself because I remember having some pain when I had to go pee, but it was never really overwhelming. But I felt like I had passed something, but it felt very small. So whatever it was not like a major thing. I didn't have to have it removed, which the urologist was telling me I might actually have to have it extracted, the predictable way. And I was like, oh no. So I started taking more supplements for like drinking water with apple cider vinegar, which is supposed to be very helpful for breaking down kidney stones. So I did a lot of reading about this because this is like the worst pain. And, I'd wake up in the middle of the night suddenly, and then I'd have to pace around the apartment for 4 hours with this sort of like, we'd feel it in the back area, and it wouldn't go away, or it would take hours to go away. So eventually it seemed to work, and I took something called, what is it called? Chandra Petra or something. It's also called the Stone Buster supplement. It's supposed to break down the thing, and I was using that every day. So it went away, and I've been okay. So now I'm just going to keep going on the high water with lemon juice and the vinegar supplement with my water on a daily basis. It seemed to happen to me, on 3 years before that. I'd had it before, if you're not drinking enough water. So I took care of that, and everything was fine. And then I got a call from my doctor saying he didn't like the look of my latest heart test, because they do a reading when I was in there getting a scan for something. And there was something he could not figure out. So he referred me to a cardiologist. Cardiologist called me, asked me the 100 questions about, do I have any other symptoms or pain? I'm like, no. and I have no, lifestyle habits that would point to this. But he was suggesting I come in now for the, the full test, which is like a 5-hour procedure. And now that's set up for January 7th. I have to go in the morning, and most of that time is sitting around, and they inject you with a radioactive isotope, and I don't like the idea of this, but that's to see what's going on in the heart area. Then you do a 10-minute treadmill test, then you rest, then you take another injection of this stuff, and more tests. So it's like a 5-hour thing. So I'm still debating whether I want to even do that. It probably is a good idea to have this checked just to make sure. But, like I'm 59 right now, so, now at the age where things start to accumulate, so one thing after another. So that will be January. Next month, I have to go see the eye doctor for my regular test. And so I mentioned before, I have this thing called fibromuscular dysplasia, which is a narrowing of the arteries. This is what my brain surgeon told me. So that was could have been part of the reason I had this aneurysm, is that there was a restrictive blood flow from an artery that then, ballooned. And my eye doctor had mentioned this too, that she noticed it in the full 3D scan of my eyeballs, that it seemed like there was a narrowing of the arteries. No, she was just guessing at what that could be. So we'll see. But right now, I'm doing okay. I'm not in pain, so I'm happy. I take every day now as a bonus after April of this year. So, and guitar is constantly on my mind. So, I have to get out and I have to play, and that's really what is keeping me going, is to get into the playing and keeping my mind off other things and just trying to enjoy the time, because it is like a second life for me. So let's see here. What else we got? What string gauges do I mainly use? That's Ethan. I'm using, I'm going to have to check this out here on my string gauge thing. I use, I think, a 9 on the high E. So it's fairly light. I tried an 8 for a while, but my guitar seemed to not like the 8s. It would unwind. You know how the string is wound at the ball end? It would actually slowly unwind, so my guitar didn't like it. And I think I'm on my string gauge from the low E now would be a 46, a 32, a 24, a 13, a 10, and a 9. So this is not standard on my gauges. Like, you can't buy a set of strings in a pack like this. You have to actually mix them up. So I'm always picking, it's like, okay, I'll take one from there. And so there's usually 2 or 3 brands. So I don't care about brands. I don't think it really matters. But after, much experimentation with that Parker guitar, I am going for a little bit lighter gauges because it's less work for bending, especially when you're trying to do things like Pink Floyd. Like I used to play, Another Brick in the Wall, and there's some like almost 2 octave bends in there, which easily can break strings. So most of the time I don't even attempt to do those bends anymore, even with light strings, because you're just asking for a broken string. So I will, slide up a whole step and do the bend from there, kind of thing. So yeah, a lot of people think strings make a difference, but to me, I'm not in that way of thinking that they do. I mean, new strings make a difference. I mean, I've had old strings on the guitar where sometimes I don't change them for 3 months, and I've been playing, 2 hours every second day, a lot of playing. Well, I finally changed them last week, and I, noticed it right away. Of course, you have a much nicer tone, and it feels better, and everything feels cleaner. So yeah, you do have to switch them out. I probably don't switch them out often enough, but I don't really like constantly having to change strings. I mean, some people when they're playing live will do this every night. If you're in a live situation where you have to gig every night, some people will change the strings every night. I would never do that. Even if I was playing every day, I would never do it more than every month or two. So that's it for my string story. Aiden says, shut up and play music. Okay, so I don't know. Is this where I start to use my deletion button here to hide people? Shut up and play music. But I do play music. I'm playing music all the time. And let's see what else we have on here. Says, Robben, I want to say thank you for what you do, and I say you're welcome, and thank you for listening and watching. And Doc Holst, thanks for the tip. I see that is highlighted there, and he's leaving the chat. So thanks for participating, and thank you for contributing. I appreciate the support. So, like I say, I wanted to leave this open as a way to, ask questions about anything, and let me know how you're doing in the different parts of the world. So, I think my main audience is still the U.S. I don't know what the percentage was, probably 40-50%. And then I think it's UK after that, and then Germany, Canada. And then it starts to get down into single digits. Theodorito says, hey, what's the smoke in the background on the streets? Well, that's just fog, really. If you see that back there, that's basically, it's clouded over. Got a lot of gray now. So we've had some flooding in this area as well. I don't know if you've been seeing the news, like the Abbotsford area, which is about an hour away from Vancouver. The highways have actually collapsed in various spots throughout BC, cutting off access for supply lines. So people are stuck now in their small towns in the interior of BC, not getting food or supplies. Even access to gas is restricted, and there's been some pretty major flooding, like in Abbotsford, the low-lying farm areas, and many farm animals have died. And that's like, I can't remember the last time we had that, where it was a serious flooding going on. We even had a tornado a month ago, which is like never happens here. So yeah, there are weird things going on, and it gets weirder every year. I mean, we now have a lot more smoke from interior BC from all the fires in the summer. They're starting to drift down here. We get the smoke now for up to a week coming in, and it used to be only like 1 or 2 days, but now the fires have gotten really bad in the summer. Everything is just drying out much quicker, and it becomes even difficult to breathe. So we have to get like a air purifier that has to be run all day. So it can get nasty. I mean, they basically tell you not to go outside. And usually we have really good air here when it's clean, because we're right by the ocean. Brown Brett St. Germain asks, where did you find motivation to really work as a musician? Good question. And my motivation would be from enjoying what I'm doing and loving music. I mean, that's what started me playing guitar, was buying records and really enjoying the music that I was buying, and having grown up with that, because my father played it all the time in the house, and from many different artists, from Johnny Cash to the Rolling Stones to Creedence to Nana Muscuri to the Brothers Four to the Kingston Trio, Roy Orbison, Chuck Berry. So I had a wide range of influences. a lot of the 50s stuff, really, basically from the mid 50s till like 1970. I would say that entire 15-year period, I am familiar with everything, from doo-wop, Everly Brothers, Simon and Garfunkel, vocal groups, instrumental groups like the Ventures and the instrumentals of the time. One of my main songs that I could think of as a key moment in my life as a kid, hearing something that I thought was so cool that I couldn't believe it, would have been the instrumental from the Fireballs called Torquay. It's Torquay. Now that's a group that was also called Jimmy Gilmer and the Fireballs. They had a hit called Sugar Shack. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you can look it up on YouTube. But they also did instrumentals, and they had that song called Torquay. And now my dad had recorded that on an 8-track tape, and he recorded all these songs from a radio program called Jukebox Saturday Night, and that's when we lived in Edmonton, from like 1962 to 73. He recorded all these shows, so we had a nice variety of songs and bands that eventually we heard all the time because he had a certain amount of 8-track tapes and he recorded all these things, but we got to hear this stuff over and over and over again. So I began to get very familiar with the order of songs. So I knew what was coming. It was like in your memory, it's like, okay, the song is over now, so now comes, the Fireballs song from Torquay. So I'd always look forward to that moment. If he was playing this track, 8-track in the house or in the car or the truck, if we were in the car or truck, but mostly at home, I would hear this. And I would be really looking forward to hearing that song because to me, it was like one of the coolest guitar instrumentals. Well, I hadn't heard a lot of instrumentals at that point, but that sort of did it for me. Is that surf sound, 2.5 minutes, very short, really great rhythm. That stuck with me over years, and it's still, when I hear it now, it puts me back to being 7, 8 years old again and hearing it. And I didn't start guitar until I was 10, so I took those influences with me. And Creedence would have been the next big one. John Fogerty and his lead guitar playing, that's my first exposure to improvised jamming. Heard it through the grapevine. Susie Q. Those are my two big influences as far as guitar jams go. Not Jimi Hendrix, not Santana, not the Rolling Stones, not Eric Clapton, none of those guys. Strictly Creedence. And that would have been, to me, you can't really do better than that as far as starting with some really good influences in music. I mean, you're talking amazing songwriting, amazing vocals, and to me, not, I wouldn't say the most technical guitar playing, but still amazing guitar playing for its time. And, that's what I got out of things like Creedence, was just this free-form approach to music, which was like, oh my God, here's a song that's going to be 10 minutes long. It takes up half the 8-track. And I couldn't wait to hear that when it got into the guitar solo, and it just went on and it went on, and it was always exciting to me. I didn't really care about the lyrics of the song so much. I was immediately mesmerized by, what is this guitar solo thing? To me, that was the coolest thing that I took out of music. I mean, I appreciated songs like, Satisfaction and Honky Tonk Woman. These were also very cool in a different way. But it was that guitar solo thing that I heard from Creedence that really, pushed me in that direction. And of course, as I started buying records, I began to buy all these guitarists on the album, Rory Gallagher and Michael Schenker, number one, ZZ Top, Jeff Beck, Mark Knopfler. Anybody that played solos and played them well, I wanted to hear that and I wanted to learn from it. So that constant hearing of, guitarists of the time and learning from them is really what kept me motivated for years, just to learn all their stuff. So, I mean, I basically learned every solo from every guitarist, entire albums I went through until I finally got to the point where I began to do my own thing. And that's what keeps me going, is still wanting to write music and enjoying playing. That often dries up with people, especially when they get older. I mean, I came into this fairly late as far as writing my own music. I didn't start until I was maybe 40. So it's maybe been 20 years, just over 20 years. And so that's continued, and the enthusiasm continues, because that is what keeps me happy, is playing and getting in the zone of being able to improvise and continue to create my own music. It's a really great feeling and a great release to escape into that. So I don't really listen to a ton of music anymore. I used to listen a lot more. It was more listening than playing, but now more, it's like if I have the time, I'm actually going to try to write some music and play. That is, a better use of my time than just putting on an album. If I'm, out and about on my bike and I got my earbuds, I will listen to something. But I'm almost now trying to write almost on a daily basis. Keep doing something fresh. That's what keeps me going, is the freshness. And I respect guitarists that do the same kind of thing, like Michael Schenker. He's like 66 years old. He still releases an album every 2 years. And he has been doing that for 50 years. That is like 1 in 100 guitarists that still do that. Most of these older guys, they do not produce music anymore. There's an interesting thing about musicians. It seems to be, it's the age of 15 to 25, generally speaking. That is the prime of their music and what they make. Sometimes you get a little bit longer, to 30, maybe 35. But generally speaking, almost all of them have done their best music by the time they are 20. And that is really weird to me, because when I was 20, I was still, learning all these guitar players. It didn't happen for 20 years where I finally started creating music myself. So, you look at Eddie Van Halen, for instance. He was, writing everything almost by the 1977, 78. The writing was already done. Basically, the next 7 years of Van Halen, done, with occasional songs onto that. But that majority of writing and creation was all done as a teenager. Michael Schenker, almost the same thing, though he kept it up a longer period. He was starting at the age of 15, and he did most of his best work up until, let's say, 25, 26. And then it became sort of a repetition of what had come before, or got worse, and or spotty. So it's always very interesting to see this pattern of musicians and how their creativity goes. And it's, there's usually a limited amount of time, and then it becomes difficult to top yourself. So for me, the challenge is always topping myself, or at least trying to match what has come before or expand on what has come before. And that's what I'm happy to say I do when I'm playing an extended solo. It is always to find new areas to go into that I have not touched on before. It's like, oh, wow, I played something this way now that I never played it that way before. A new combination of notes. And that is the goal, to constantly spread, your repertoire of ideas, and that only comes with repetition through improvisation. And most people don't get into this. They like to learn a song, and they like to learn it note by note, and that is very limiting. It restricts you, because you're just learning what someone else has done, and that is, you have to grow as a musician. You have to get your own ideas. You have to get your own feel into the music and what that music means to you. So that is the ultimate goal, is to express yourself in your own style and do it for a long time. The longer, the better, and that becomes easier with time. So that's my extended answer about what motivates me. And let's see what else we've got here. Someone says, thanks for what you do. Yes, you're welcome. Shoutouts from White Rock. Okay, that's not too far away. Greetings from miserable Britain. Well, yeah, I guess we would say that we have a very similar weather to you in the UK. Lots of rain. Somebody asked, did you ever meet or play with Rush? That's Red Rock and Geezer. Play with Rush? No. I don't think anybody really plays with Rush except Rush. They were strictly a band that played only with themselves. It was only until the band broke up, really, that I think any of them played with anyone else. So no, that would never be possible. I mean, to actually play with Rush. I have played Rush, if that's what you mean. Did I ever play any Rush? Yes. I used to play lots of Rush. It was, again, you know, something that my friend, when I was a kid, Steve, who he had a lot of Rush albums, he's totally into them, so I would learn songs from those Rush albums, and some of them were, you know, like 2112. He would dare me to figure out the entire side of the album, and I'd say, yeah, I can do it in a week, and he would bet me some money for it, you know, like, I bet you $5 that you can't do it, and I'd say, well, yeah, I can. So that was always the challenge to me, is to learn songs accurately and do it quickly. So that's, again, you know, I was probably 15, 16 when I did that. And I learned a lot of Rush songs. I think my favorite was off Hemisphere's album, that instrumental, La Villa Strangiato, which was, to me, that was sort of the peak of Rush, you know, that type of instrumental, which was really fun to play. And I played that in bands as well. So yeah, the Rush I did play over the years, and like with many other guitarists of the 70s and 80s. And by the way, Alex Lifeson from Rush, his favorite all-time player is Michael Schenker, who is probably my favorite player. I read that in an interview once, that he had other favorite players, or, you know, people that he respected, like Steve Howe or Steve Hackett, and, you know, many players. But when they asked him who really influenced him, you know, in a sort of overall way musically, he said it was Michael Schenker. And they used to tour together with UFO, which was the group that Michael was in the 70s. So Rush, UFO toured together, and Alex would say he would watch Michael playing backstage, you know, before the show, and he was just, he said, in awe, because Schenker was such a dedicated player. That's all he did was practice, 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 to the exclusion of socializing with the band. You know, he would probably most likely have stayed in his hotel room alone while the rest of them were doing drugs and partying. Schenker was all about buckling down and working on solos and continuously growing as a player. So that was a great lesson to learn there, is that you have to buckle down, you know, to get anywhere. And that requires many hours and years of practice. So I saw Rush once, and that was with my friend Steve, back in probably 1979 or 80, I think it was, when they came to Vancouver at Pacific Coliseum. So that was around probably the Permanent Waves album, or just after Hemispheres. I can't remember which, but I only saw them once. Somebody else mentioning about their kidney stone pain. Yes, I've talked to lots of people who've had this problem, and yeah, it's not fun. I agree. And I still have the bottle of drugs they gave me for this pain, which thankfully I didn't have to take. I mean, these were the opioids, you know, the heavy duty stuff that I was getting in preparation for some extreme pain, which luckily I didn't have. Okay. More greetings from the UK. Somebody here says they love Rory Gallagher. Well, yes, I love Rory, and I could never understand anyone who doesn't love Rory. This guy, to me, is like the epitome of what a guitar player should be. In probably one of the #1 examples of somebody who's so passionate about his instrument that he, you know, wore the finish off his guitar from years of abuse, and he still kept playing it. He didn't care about going out and replacing the instrument because it was scratched to shit and it had no finish left on it. it was a sign of he loved his guitar, and he just kept playing it. He didn't care about clothing or fashion. He wore the same like lumberjack shirt for 15 years. Same haircut his whole life. He never went for trends. You know, even though in the 80s everything was new wave, and you know, who's got the best hairstyle, and the boys were looking like girls. He just continued exactly the same as he always had. And I always respected people like this that didn't, you know, change with trends, trying to be trendy or thinking they could get some kind of new audience. That to me was always like a sellout thing. So Rory, you know, was also one of the first guitar players that I heard. And I remember my mother bringing back an album from Germany when she went there. She brought back Best Of album. And then I started buying all his albums. And, you know, that was like the definition of passion for a player. He was just completely dedicated to guitar, completely dedicated to putting on a really great live show. You would see it in his live videos, the energy. It was full out, you know, dedication to putting on a show and showing the joy that he was feeling in connection with his music. Now, these are the things that, you know, even if you didn't like somebody's music so much, these are the things you should take away from that musician to learn from. It's the same with guys like Jimi Hendrix. It's not about playing like Hendrix, trying to play like Hendrix, because, I mean, there's technically thousands of players that are better than Jimi Hendrix. But the thing to learn from guys like Jimi Hendrix are their attitude towards music, the idea of creativity, and doing something different that maybe someone else hasn't done before, bringing something new to music, not repeating what has been done before. Guys like Hendrix were influenced by old blues players, Albert King, Freddie King, B.B. King, Robert Johnson, all these guys. He was playing with people like, you know, funk groups, James Brown even, I believe. And he took all these influences and he made it into something his own. And that's what everybody remembers about Hendrix as being, you know, a one-of-a-kind innovator, not just in his guitar, but in, you know, in his looks, and he was being himself. And that is the thing that these people are doing. They're being themselves, and they don't care what anybody else thinks. And Rory Gallagher, the same. I mean, he wasn't like a flashy dresser or putting on this kind of showy guitar thing that Hendrix would often do, you know, the gimmicks of playing with your teeth. You know, that to me is, you know, completely irrelevant. You don't need that kind of thing. But still, you're putting on a show, you're showing people that you're passionate about what you're doing, and you're becoming one with the instrument. And there's very few musicians like that to me today that show that kind of level of passion and personality. As far as guitar playing goes, it's really rare to see that anymore, mostly because people don't really play guitar anymore, at least not in the popular songs, you know, the top 100 of Spotify, the top 50. There really is nothing to do with guitar anymore. It's all to do with Justin Bieber and Adele and Drake. You know, there's really no room for guitar or guitar improvisation anymore. So I'm coming from an old time, like the time of the dinosaurs. So, you know, the ice age is upon us now, where the dinosaurs are dying out. And I just keep doing what I know. And that's what all these old guitar players do. They just keep doing what they know. And that's what I grew up with, so I'm going to stick with it. And let's see here. Somebody else was mentioning, yeah, Michael Schenker. He played with the Scorpions. His first album was 1972 with the Scorpions. It was called Lonesome Crow, and he was like 15. And he just revisited that song. It was called In Search of the Peace of Mind, which is his first song he ever wrote when he was like 15. And it's on that first Scorpions album. He just redid it on his latest Michael Schenker album, and it's actually quite good. But, you know, he's does that occasionally, revisits old songs and maybe does a new version. But there's a guy who's been around a long time, and I'm glad to see it that he's still putting out music. It's kind of like Bob Dylan. I mean, isn't Bob Dylan already late 70s? His last album was actually quite good. This is really amazing that, you know, he can still put something out. So I think that is the ultimate goal, is to keep being creative. You know, you have to keep playing, and you have to keep working on ideas, and as long as, you know, the fingers function and the brain functions, you have to keep at it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. I mean, that's how it is for me now. You know, I'm at the point where improvising for an hour and a half is like nothing. It's absolutely nothing for me. I can do it as long as I am interested in the music I'm playing to, and I should be, because I wrote it, the backing track. I should like it, that I can keep going for a long time and explore the space, as they said in that Blue Oyster Cult sketch on Saturday Night Live. Explore the space, man. So yeah, so I was very sad when someone like Rory Gallagher died, and I never got to see him. And he obviously died from alcohol abuse. So that was his failing, like a lot of them. Drugs, alcohol. Gary Moore, same thing, died of alcohol overdose. With Rory Gallagher, it was liver problems, and then he had to go in for an operation, and they didn't come out of the operation. I think it was something like that. He basically swelled up like a balloon, gained a lot of weight, and then there was liver failure, and then he had some kind of reaction. And he wasn't that old. I believe he was only in his 40s. And but you could see it near the end there. I think he was like 93, 94 that he died. So I was very sad that I didn't get to see him. So now I can only see him through YouTube videos. And guys like Michael Schenker I have seen. I think I've seen Michael at least 3 times. 1980, and then 99, and then about 2 years ago. And you know, I've seen Jeff Beck. I've seen Uli Roth from the Scorpions. Thinking of some other guitarists that I've seen. Obviously Robben Ford, Jimmy Vaughn from the Fabulous Thunderbirds, Roy Buchanan, Adrian Belew, also in the 80s, David Lindley, I've seen many times. All these people came to Vancouver, and they were quite cheap to see. Tickets were like $5 to $10 at that time. I believe when I saw Roy Buchanan, I think he actually died shortly after that gig, like months. They found him hanging in he was in a jail. Can't remember for what reason, but he was in jail, and they found him, he'd hanged himself in jail. And that was shortly after that gig that I saw it with him in the 80s. Somebody asked if I like Stevie Ray Vaughan. I do like Stevie Ray Vaughan, but in limited doses. I find him to be too overplayed for my taste now. So it's probably because of the radio play, and it was on the radio all the time, that I really got sick of hearing it. You know, like Pride and Joy. I'd be very happy never to hear that song again in my life. I'm sorry, but I can't hear it. Same with things like Cold Shot. This stuff has just been so overplayed. There's so many other players that should be played and don't get played. So I usually go for people that are sort of the underdogs and are hidden, you know, like Mick Taylor. But Stevie Ray Vaughan, obviously a huge influence on a lot of people, kept the guitar thing going in the 80s because he came out in 83 at the time when, you know, people didn't want ugly guitar players anymore. You know, and Stevie Ray Vaughan was not like, he wasn't like Duran Duran. This guy wasn't a model. He just brought skills, and he kind of kept that interest in guitar going. So for that was really great. You know, and that continued with guys like Gary Moore with the blues. Like in 1990, Gary Moore kind of took over and kept the blues going. But yeah, Stevie Ray Vaughan, that's somebody that everybody has tried to copy at one time or another. Wear these hats, which drove me nuts. People wearing these hats all the time. I actually preferred his brother, to be honest, Jimmy Vaughan. Hugely underrated player that Stevie Ray admits he learned almost everything from. Now, Stevie Ray is more a technical player, plays obviously faster solos and that kind of thing. But as far as rhythm work goes, Jimmy Vaughan is better than Stevie Ray Vaughan. I'll say it right out there. And Jimmy also could play good solos at the time. His first 5 albums with the Fabulous Thunderbirds are, that's a virtual Bible of old style blues playing that Jimmy, learned from the greats, the B.B. Kings, all the Kings, Albert King, Freddie King. Very sort of concise, short solos, and didn't overdo it. And his rhythm work was just, amazing. I mean, obviously he's playing a lot of cliches of blues, but if you go through that material from the Fabulous Thunderbirds, there's a lot to learn from there. And obviously you can go backwards and learn a lot. And there's nothing that Stevie Ray Vaughan does in his work that really wasn't done by his brother, and also in a more, to me, interesting way. If I had to prefer to listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan albums or Fabulous Thunderbird albums, I'd take the T-Birds, because they sort of stuck to that old style of blues, and they also had a great singer with Kim, what the heck was his name again? Can never remember his last name. Great singer, great harp player. So they brought that element in there. And I used to play a lot of Fabulous Thunderbird songs. It's a really great way to learn blues, and it's not, super complicated, but you get a lot of short songs, a lot of interesting music, and they had a fantastic live show. I saw them in '86 at the Town Pump when they had just released that Tough Enough song. Wasn't that the hit? Tough Enough, and that album. That was their big breakthrough album. And that was a fantastic show. Really amazing player. He sort of dropped off years later. He did one more album with his brother called, what was it called? In Style or something like that. That was the album he did with Stevie Ray Vaughan. And that's also a great album where you got to hear both guitarists playing off each other. So different styles. But yeah, Stevie was the guy who really took the the extended soloing and the more technical aspect. He took it farther. But I distinctly remember being in a record store in Edmonton in like 1983 when I was looking at that Stevie Ray Vaughan album. And I was talking to this black guy in the store who was heavily into the blues, and he said, "Forget about that. Buy this." And he pulled out this album from the T-Birds. It was called T-Bird Rhythm, 1982. Check it out. Amazing album. And I was like, really? And he says, this is the real deal. So there again, this guy came from the old school of more of a rhythmic-based playing, where Stevie Ray Vaughan to me is he's more of a solo guy. I wouldn't never say he's a guy that I would go to for rhythm playing. Obviously, he could play rhythm, but I wouldn't look to him as somebody who's got a huge volume of rhythm licks that you could learn from. He's more about soloing. And whereas Jimmy, he took that whole catalog of riffs and licks and tricks from the rhythm players, and that's what he worked on. He was rhythm, rhythm, rhythm. And that's what this guy told me. He says, get this. And I got that album, and then I was converted into a T-Birds fan at that point. And I still like to talk about Jimmy because he never got his due. He was always overshadowed by his brother. And that was really not fair for me. Jimmy now plays in a totally different way. He's probably gotten worse. Some players do not keep their chops or their harmonic ideas over time. Jimmy he became even lazier, like what was first an economical style of playing a limited few bars in the solo and then out. He's now even gotten more economical, and to me it's almost like, okay, then what's the point anymore when you're only playing 2 notes or 3 notes? So I'm not really crazy about what I've heard from recent Jimmy Vaughan, and that's just how it goes. People change their styles over time and get worse. It's rare to hear a player keep their chops or improve. One of the few would be someone like Michael Schenker, who still seems to be able to technically play everything that he's ever played. So yeah, but that's rare. Kim Wilson, yes, thank you. Kim Wilson is I was thinking Kim Mitchell. He's a Canadian guitar player. So yes, Kim Wilson, who I mean, just to show you how good Jimmy Vaughn was, when Jimmy left the band in, I don't know, I think it was 1989, 88 or 89. They needed 2 guitar players to replace him in the next T-Birds album, which to me, then everything dropped off. It was not the same band anymore. Sure, they had Kim on vocals and harmonica, but guitar work completely changed, and you could hear it. It was an obvious difference. And yeah, so I still, look at this Fabulous Thunderbird stuff, and that's something I gave to my father as well, because I would always make him cassettes of my albums, and I would think, oh, this is something my dad would like. And he was really into blues, and he played a really good harp himself. So I would make him recordings of these Fabulous Thunderbirds albums, and he just loved it. He played that stuff all the time, and he would play along with it as well. So I was always happy to give him music that he would enjoy, and that was over years. So I got to bring him to that Fabulous Thunderbirds concert along with my mother, and because they were hearing that music all the time. So that was one of the few times I got to see a show with my father. Fabulous Thunderbirds, the very first show we saw together was Johnny Cash, 1974. They took me to see that in Vancouver at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre. I was 12. So as far as first concerts go, hard to beat. That is really hard to beat. Johnny Cash. And then I think we didn't see another show together until 1988, and that was John Fogerty. Unfortunately, when Fogerty would refuse to play any Creedence songs. That was the time when he was having a lawsuits with the original Saul Zaentz, owner of Fantasy Records, where they were suing Fogerty, for, his first solo album sounding like Creedence, and they would try to sue him for sounding like himself. And Fogerty was so burned out from the entire legal fiasco over Creedence songs that he refused to play Creedence songs, and he wasn't playing them for at least 10 years. So unfortunately, we went in there with this huge appreciation of Creedence and didn't get to hear one song. We only got to hear from 2 albums of Fogerty's solo material, and one of them albums was actually not very good. That was the Eye of the Zombie album that came out in 88, or was it 86? But that's all he had. So basically you had one album and then the second album, which was not very good. So on 2-3 years ago, Fogerty came to Abbotsford, where my father lived outside of Abbotsford, and we got tickets to the show, and I got a ticket for my dad. And I was like, we're going to go see Fogerty, and you're going to hear all that Creedence stuff finally. And my dad was already 79 years old. And then the day of the concert came, or 2 days before this, and my dad had fallen down on the ice, or just tripped on the pavement or something, and had hurt himself. He was already sick at this time. He had his bladder removed a year before, and he was on drugs and chemo. So he was in a weak state. So he fell down, he hurt himself, and then he could not come to the concert. And I was so upset about that, because that would have been the last time we would have been able to go to see a show, because he died a few months later in December.